Thanksgiving used to be my favorite holiday. The smell of roasted turkey, the warmth of the kitchen, the sound of laughter echoing through the house. I used to believe that no matter what happened during the year, this one day would bring us together. But that was before. Last year was the last time I ever stepped foot in that house. One sentence from my mother screamed in front of 40 people changed everything I thought I knew about family and love. Before we dive into this story, let me know where you are watching from today. Drop a comment below with your city or country. And if you have ever felt like the black sheep of your family, like no matter how much you give it is never enough, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Trust me, you are going to want to stay for this one. Because what happened that Thanksgiving night taught me something I wish I had learned 20 years earlier. My name is Justice. I am 32 years old and I work as a software developer in Columbus, Ohio. To understand what happened that night, you need to know where I came from. My father, Thomas, died when I was 7 years old. It was a workplace accident at a construction site. One moment he was there, and the next he was gone. I still remember the way my mother screamed when she got the phone call. I remember thinking the world had ended. 2 years later, my mother, Linda, remarried a man named Gary. I was 9. I tried so hard to like him, to make him like me, but from the very beginning there was a wall between us that I could never climb over. He was polite but distant, present but never really there for me. When I was 11, my half-sister Megan was born, and that is when everything shifted. Suddenly I was not just on the outside looking in, I was invisible. Growing up in that house felt like living in 2 different worlds under the same roof. Gary never called me his son. When he talked about me to other people, it was always Linda's boy or Justice. But when he talked about Megan, his entire face would light up. "My daughter," he would say, his voice full of pride. "Our little girl." I noticed everything. How Megan got driven to school every morning while I walked alone in the rain. How she had tutors for every subject while I taught myself algebra from library books. How her room was filled with new toys and clothes while I wore the same sneakers until they fell apart. I told myself it did not matter. I told myself that if I just worked harder, if I was just better, they would finally see me. My 12th birthday is a memory that still burns. I woke up that morning expecting something, anything that would show me I mattered. But my mother was busy preparing for Megan's dance recital. Gary was at work. By the time evening came, no one had said a word. Then the phone rang. It was Uncle Howard, my father's younger brother. He called to wish me a happy birthday. My mother's face went pale when she realized. "Oh," she said, her hand covering her mouth. "Oh, Justice, I have been so busy with Megan's recital. I completely forgot." That was it. No apology, no cake, no candles to blow out. I walked to the corner store that night with the few dollars I had saved. I bought myself a single cupcake with blue frosting. I sat on the curb outside and ate it alone, watching cars pass by, wondering what I had done wrong to deserve this. When I graduated high school as valedictorian, I thought maybe this would be different. This was big. This was something they could not ignore. I practiced my speech for weeks. I stood at that podium in front of hundreds of people and delivered the best 7 minutes of my life. I talked about perseverance, about overcoming obstacles, about believing in yourself even when no one else does. When I looked out at the crowd searching for my family, their seats were empty. They arrived 30 minutes late. Megan had a cheerleading practice and they could not leave early. Uncle Howard was the only one who recorded my speech. He was the only one who hugged me afterward and said, "Your dad would have been so proud of you." I went to Ohio State University on a full academic scholarship. What the scholarship did not cover, I paid for myself. I worked 2 jobs throughout college. I cleaned toilets at a fast food restaurant and stocked shelves at a grocery store from midnight until 6 in the morning. Some weeks I survived on instant noodles and water. My mother never sent $1. Not once. She said they could not afford it. Meanwhile, Megan attended a private school that cost $30,000 a year. Gary paid every cent without complaint. After 8 years in the tech industry, I became a senior software developer, earning a 6-figure salary. I bought my own apartment. I drove a nice car. I had a life that I built with my own 2 hands, brick by brick, with no help from anyone. When I told my mother about my promotion, she did not say congratulations. She did not say she was proud. Instead, she said, "Well, you always were the lucky one. Everything comes easy to you." I wanted to scream. I wanted to list every sacrifice, every sleepless night, every meal I skipped so I could afford textbooks. But I swallowed it all down like I always did. "Megan is struggling," my mother continued. "She has a family to take care of now. Derek is having trouble finding work." Megan had married Derek when she was 23. He was 25 at the time, charming, and full of big ideas. But in the 3 years since their wedding, he had held exactly 0 jobs for longer than 2 months. He called himself an entrepreneur. Everyone else called him unemployed. 4 years ago, I got a phone call that changed everything. My mother was crying. Gary had been laid off. They were 3 months behind on their mortgage. They were going to lose the house. "Please, Justice," she sobbed. "You are the only one who can help us." I transferred $5,000 that same day. There was no thank you, just silence. And then a few days later, a text message. "The bank needs more. Can you send another $2,000? I sent it. That became the pattern. Every few months, there was another emergency. Gary's car broke down. Megan's credit card debt was out of control. Derek's latest business venture needed capital. The roof was leaking. The furnace died. Over 4 years, I sent them more than $80,000. My friend Marcus, who works at the same company, watched this happen with growing concern. "Dude, they are using you," he said one day over lunch. "Can you not see that? They are my family," I replied. "I cannot just abandon them." Marcus shook his head. "But are you family to them?" That question haunted me. But I was not ready to answer it. Not yet. 2 weeks before Thanksgiving last year, my mother called with an invitation. "It would not be the same without you, honey," she said, her voice sweeter than I had heard in years. "Please come home." Something in my chest softened. Maybe things were changing. Maybe she finally appreciated me. I requested time off work and planned to drive 3 hours from Columbus to Dayton. 1 week before Thanksgiving, Megan sent me a text message. "Hey, Derek has this amazing business opportunity. He just needs $20,000 to get started. Can you help?" For the first time in my life, I said no. "I cannot keep doing this, Megan," I wrote back. "Derek needs to find a job." Her response was immediate and vicious. "You are so selfish. You have all this money, and you will not even help your own sister." "What is wrong with you?" I did not reply. 3 days before Thanksgiving, my mother called. Her voice was ice cold. "I heard you refused to help your sister." I tried to explain. I told her that Derek had never held a job, that I had already given them tens of thousands of dollars, that I was not a bottomless well of cash. "After everything I have done for you," she said, "this is how you repay me." The line went dead. I almost did not go. But something inside me, that little boy who still wanted his mother's love, convinced me to make the drive anyway. Maybe I could explain in person. Maybe we could work things out. I arrived at the house around noon on Thanksgiving Day. I brought a homemade dish and an expensive bottle of wine. I wanted to contribute. I wanted to show I cared. The house was already crowded. There must have been 40 people there. Extended family, neighbors, friends of my mother. People I had not seen in years, people I had never met. My mother greeted me at the door with a look that made my stomach drop. No hug, no smile. Just a curt nod and a quick turn back to her other guests. Gary barely acknowledged me. He looked at me, grunted something that might have been hello, and walked away. Megan was in the living room with Derek. When she saw me, her eyes narrowed. Derek did not even look up from his phone. Something was wrong. I could feel it in the air, thick and suffocating like humidity before a storm. Aunt Patricia, my mother's older sister, whispered something to a group of women when I walked past. They all turned to stare at me. No one said hello. I found my grandmother Ruth sitting alone in the corner. She was 82 years old, frail and soft-spoken. Her face lit up when she saw me. "Justice," she said, reaching for my hand. "My sweet boy." But before I could sit down beside her, my mother appeared out of nowhere. "Mom, I need your help in the kitchen," she said, pulling Grandma Ruth away without even looking at me. Then I saw Uncle Howard. He crossed the room quickly and wrapped me in a bear hug. "Good to see you, son," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Your father would be proud of the man you have become." Then he leaned close and whispered, "Watch your back tonight. Something is off." I did not understand what he meant. Not yet. For the next hour I tried to make conversation with the other guests. Every attempt was met with short answers or outright silence. I overheard Megan talking to a cousin in the hallway. "He thinks he is better than us just because he has money," she said loudly enough for me to hear, "but he will not even help his own family." I pretended I did not hear. I told myself to just get through the meal. When we all gathered around the long dining table, I found myself seated at the very end, furthest from everyone else. 40 people sat between me and my mother. Gary stood and said a prayer of thanks. He thanked God for family, for health, for blessings. He mentioned Megan by name. He mentioned Derek. He did not mention me. The meal began in uncomfortable silence. Then halfway through dinner, my mother stood up. She picked up a fork and tapped it against her glass until the room fell silent. "I want to address something important," she announced. She looked directly at me. 40 pairs of eyes followed her gaze. "My son here seems to have forgotten where he came from." My fork froze halfway to my mouth. The room was completely still. "I raised him alone after his father died," she continued, her voice rising. "I sacrificed everything for him. Everything." Megan nodded along her face, a mask of fake sympathy. "And now, when his family needs him most, he turns his back on us. He refused to help his own sister." His own sister. Megan began to cry. Derek rubbed her shoulder, shaking his head in disgust at me. I found my voice. "Mom, I have given you over 80,000, she cut me off, her voice exploding into a scream that rattled the windows. "Pay the mortgage or disappear. That is the only thing you are good for." The words hung in the air like smoke after an explosion. 40 people stared at me. Some looked uncomfortable. Others looked satisfied. A few even laughed. Aunt Patricia spoke up. "Linda is right. Family helps family." Derek, who had never worked a day in his life, had the audacity to add, "Some people just do not understand loyalty." I looked at Gary desperately, hoping he would say something, anything to defend me. He stared at his plate and said nothing. Grandma Ruth had tears streaming down her face, but she did not speak. Then Uncle Howard slammed his hand on the table and stood up. "That is enough, Linda," the room gasped. "This boy has done more for this family than anyone sitting at this table," Howard said, his voice shaking with anger. "And you have the nerve to humiliate him like this. Stay out of this, Howard," my mother snapped. "He is my son." Howard looked at her with something like pity. "No. You stopped being his mother a long time ago." In that moment, sitting at the end of that table, surrounded by 40 people who saw me as nothing more than an open wallet, something inside me finally broke. But it was not the kind of breaking that destroys you. It was the kind that sets you free. 25 years of trying flashed before my eyes. Every forgotten birthday, every ignored achievement, every dollar I sent that was never acknowledged. Every time I told myself that if I just gave a little more love, a little harder, they would finally see me. They never would. I was not their son or their brother. I was their emergency fund. I wiped my face slowly. I was crying, but not from sadness. These were the tears of someone finally waking up from a 25-year nightmare. I stood up. The room fell silent. They expected me to apologize, to beg for forgiveness, to promise more money. That is what I had always done. Not this time. "You want me to disappear," I said, my voice calm and steady. "Fine." My mother's face flickered with uncertainty. "For 25 years I tried to earn your love," I continued. "I worked harder than anyone in this room. I gave you everything I had. And tonight, in front of all these people, you showed me exactly what I am to you." I paused, letting the words sink in. "A paycheck." I turned to my mother. "You were never a mother to me. You were a landlord collecting rent on a childhood I never had." Her mouth opened, but no words came out. I looked at Gary. "And you? You watched all of this for 23 years and never said a word." Your silence was just as loud as her screaming. Gary's face went red. He still said nothing. I turned to Megan. "I hope Derek's next business venture works out, because I will not be funding it." Megan's tears stopped instantly, replaced by pure rage. "You cannot just leave. What about the mortgage?" I finished her sentence. "That is what you were going to say, right?" She had no response. I looked at Aunt Patricia. "You said family helps family. Where were you when I was 12 years old, eating a cupcake alone on my birthday because my own mother forgot I existed?" Patricia looked away. My mother finally found her voice. "You are overreacting. Sit down this instant." I almost laughed. No. For the first time in my life, I am reacting exactly the way I should have years ago. I walked toward the door. As I passed Grandma Ruth, she reached out and grabbed my hand. "Please," she whispered, "do not go." I knelt down beside her, my voice gentle. "I love you, Grandma. I always will. But I cannot stay in a place where I am only valued for my wallet." I took her hand in both of mine. "If you ever want to see me, Uncle Howard knows how to find me." I kissed her forehead and stood up. Uncle Howard was already on his feet. "I am leaving too." "Howard," my mother shrieked. "I should have done this years ago," he said. Thomas would never forgive me for staying silent this long. Together we walked toward the door. I stopped at the threshold and turned around one last time. 40 faces stared back at me. Some looked ashamed. Some looked angry. Most just looked shocked. "Happy Thanksgiving, everyone," I said. "Enjoy the meal. It is the last one I will ever pay for." I walked out into the cold November night and did not look back. In my car, my hands were shaking so badly I could barely grip the steering wheel. I pulled out my phone and called Marcus. "I did it," I said when he answered. "I finally did it." "I am proud of you, brother," he said. "Come over. We have plenty of food and people who actually care about you." I drove away from that house, from that family, from 25 years of hoping for something that was never going to happen. The days after Thanksgiving were chaos. My phone exploded with calls and messages. Linda, Megan, Gary, even Aunt Patricia. "You are being ridiculous. Come home and apologize right now." How could you embarrass me like that in front of everyone? Not one single apology. Not one acknowledgement of what they had done. I blocked every number. A week later, Patricia called from a number I did not recognize. "Your mother is devastated," she said. "She cannot pay the mortgage this month. What are you going to do about it?" "That sounds like her problem," I replied. "You would let your own mother lose her house. She told me to disappear." "I am just following her instructions." I hung up and blocked that number too. A month later, Uncle Howard called with news. Linda and Gary had to sell the house. They moved into a small 2-bedroom apartment on the other side of town. Derek was still unemployed, so Megan had to get a job for the first time in her life. She was working as a cashier at a drugstore, and according to Howard, complained about it constantly. Gary's health was declining from the stress. He had developed high blood pressure and spent most of his days sitting in front of the television. I did not feel joy at their suffering, but I also did not feel guilt. This was not revenge. This was simply the natural consequence of treating the person who helped you like garbage. I kept in touch with Grandma Ruth through Uncle Howard. I sent her flowers on her birthday and called her on holidays. She understood why I had to leave, even if she wished things were different. The first few months after that Thanksgiving were harder than I expected. Not because I missed them. I missed who I had wanted them to be. I grieved the family. I had spent 25 years trying to create the love I had tried to earn from people who were incapable of giving it. Some nights I lay awake wondering if I had made a mistake. Maybe I was too harsh. Maybe I should have given them another chance. I started seeing a therapist. She helped me understand something crucial. "You did not abandon your family," she said. "You finally stopped abandoning yourself." That hit me like a truck. Slowly I started to rebuild. Uncle Howard became more than an uncle. He became the father figure I had lost when I was 7 years old. We had dinner together every Sunday. He told me stories about my dad that I had never heard before. He showed me old photographs. He helped me remember that I came from someone who loved me unconditionally. Marcus and his wife started inviting me to their family gatherings. I met their parents, their siblings, their kids. They welcomed me like I had always been part of their family. I started volunteering at a local youth center, mentoring kids from difficult homes, kids who reminded me of the boy I used to be. showing them that where you come from does not determine where you end up. 1 year after that terrible Thanksgiving, I hosted my own. It was a small gathering. Uncle Howard, Marcus and his wife, a few close friends, and sitting in the place of honor at the head of the table, Grandma Ruth. Uncle Howard had driven 2 hours to bring her. The apartment was small, the food was simple, but the room was filled with something I had never experienced at my mother's house: genuine love. After dinner, Grandma Ruth took my hand. "Your father would be so proud of you," she said, her eyes glistening. "Because I am successful?" I asked. She shook her head. "No, sweetheart. Because you finally know your worth." I cried that night. But for the first time and as long as I could remember, they were tears of happiness. Here is what I have learned from all of this. Family is not about blood. It is not about obligation, or guilt, or who happens to share your genetics. Family is about who shows up, who stays, who loves you without conditions or price tags attached. Some people will only ever see you as useful. And the moment you stop being useful, they will discard you without a second thought. But that says everything about their character and nothing about your value as a human being. I spent 25 years trying to fill a hole in my mother's heart that I did not create and could not fix. Her inability to love me was her limitation, not my failure. The moment I stopped chasing her approval was the moment I finally found peace. Do I hate them? No. Hate is too heavy to carry around. I have simply accepted that they were not capable of being what I needed. And that is okay, because I have found people who are. Sometimes I wonder if they ever understood why I really left, if they ever realized that it was not about the money, but then I remember that it does not matter. My peace is no longer dependent on their understanding. If you are out there right now, still hoping that someone will finally see your worth, still bending over backward for people who only take and never give, maybe it is time to stop, not because you are not worthy, but because the people who truly love you already see it. They do not need you to prove anything, and neither do you. So let me ask you this. Have you ever had to walk away from family to find your peace? Have you ever had to choose yourself after years of choosing everyone else? Drop your story in the comments below. I would love to hear from you. If this story touched your heart, please hit that like button. It helps more people find this channel. And if you have not already, subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss another story. Share this video with someone who might need to hear it today. You never know whose life you might change. Thank you for watching, for listening, and for being here with me. I hope wherever you are, you know that you are worthy of love exactly as you are. Take care of yourself. And remember, the family you choose is just as real as the family you were born into. Until next time.